Pervez Musharraf. He was one of the polarizing figures in Pakistan's politics. He died in exile in Dubai on Sunday at the age of 79. Musharraf was Pakistan's most recent military leader, governing for nearly a decade after seizing power in a bloodless coup in 1999. But for India, he was the villain of the Kargil War, the mastermind behind Pakistan's infiltrations in Kargil. He would go on to do a complete U-turn after. Take a look at Pervez Musharraf's legacy.
Sadr Pakistan, General Pervez Musharraf. Pervez Musharraf.
Pervez Musharraf has worn many hats in his career. General, dictator and traitor to the country. His stunning rise to power is only dwarfed by his rapid fall to ignominy. For many Indians, Musharraf was the dictator next door. But beyond the perceptions, what was his imprint on Indo-Pak relations? Let's find out. Musharraf was appointed Pakistan's army chief in 1998. Back then, he was third in line for the post. He was academic, straight-talking and apparently liberal. All qualities that impressed then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. As time would prove, it was a fateful impression. Musharraf was the mastermind behind Pakistan's infiltrations in Kargil. The spectre of war between India and Pakistan loomed large in those 2 months. Eventually, India threw out the Pakistani soldiers disguised as Kashmiri militants. But within Pakistan, the Kargil War led to a breakdown in relations. Musharraf claimed the plan was blessed by Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. But Sharif denied that claim. After Kargil, there were murmurs of a possible coup in Islamabad. They became louder and evident by October 1999. Musharraf deposed and exiled Nawaz Sharif.
I only wish to assure you that the
And
situation
thus
in the
began
country
9 years
is
of
perfectly
military
calm,
rule in Pakistan.
stable and under control. Let no outside forces think that they can take advantage of the prevailing situation.
Musharraf's biggest legacy is the strange but strong relations between Pakistan and America. He aligned with George Bush after the 9/11 attacks by Al-Qaeda. Western money and weapons kept flowing in exchange for Pakistan's support in nearby Afghanistan. Musharraf's support for America earned him enemies in the army, as well as Pakistan's radical Muslim groups. One of them, the Tehreek-e-Taliban, emerged under his watch. No doubt Musharraf wasn't sincere about his war on terror. He repeatedly denied knowing the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden. But it turned out the Al-Qaeda chief was living in Abbottabad all along, right under the nose of Pakistan's army. On India, he would do a complete U-turn after Kargil. Musharraf and Vajpayee crafted almost 5 years of peace between India and Pakistan. The zenith of that period was the SAARC summit in 2004. After the summit, both leaders released a joint statement. Musharraf promised that no terrorist acts would be launched from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. He also agreed to a structured dialogue on Kashmir. Was Musharraf serious about these statements? It's hard to say. But there is no denying that he created the impression that he was serious. Musharraf had 5 meetings with Indian prime ministers when he ruled Pakistan, 2 with Vajpayee and 3 with Manmohan Singh. Like all dictators, Musharraf had an inflated understanding of his own popularity. But in reality, he was battling multiple controversies. His party was ousted in the 2008 elections and he himself faced the prospect of impeachment. So in August 2008, Musharraf stepped down. But his troubles wouldn't end. He faced criminal charges in the assassination of Benazir Bhutto. Many of our supporters say Musharraf purposefully did not give enough security. He also faced treason charges for his 1999 coup. So Musharraf did what most former dictators do. He fled. He started living in Dubai in 2016. 3 years later, a special court in Pakistan sentenced him to death for the military coup. The decision was overturned, but the legacy stuck.
So there has been a lot of debate since yesterday about what Pervez Musharraf's legacy is. A bit of a furore after Shashi Tharoor, Congress leader, said he was a man of peace in the later half. This was followed by a rebuff from the BJP and a response from Shashi Tharoor. But what really was Pervez Musharraf's legacy? Joining me now to speak on this is Sudheendra Kulkarni, who was an aide to former Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee and had a ringside view of those meetings between Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Pervez Musharraf. Thank you so much, Mr. Kulkarni, for speaking with us today on Beyond the Headline. Great to have you on the show, and we're keen to know your perspective on the legacy of a figure who is very controversial and seen in different lights. To some, a villain, to some, someone who actually managed to bring the closest kind of peace between India and Pakistan. How would you view the legacy of Pervez Musharraf?
From Pakistan's point of view, he was a dictator, a military dictator, as you rightly pointed out, and therefore there is not much respect for him now that he is no more. From India's point of view, he was of course a villain who was responsible for the Kargil War, which turned out to be a fiasco for Pakistan. He was also a leader who wrecked the Agra summit, where Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji had invited him for a summit in 2001. Prime Minister Vajpayee took a very bold decision, in fact an uncharacteristic decision, of inviting Musharraf, even though Musharraf was responsible for the Kargil War, which happened just 2 years earlier in 1999. But Vajpayee, being truly committed to peace between India and Pakistan, he decided to have a summit meeting with Musharraf, inviting him to Agra. And Agra, as we all know, is a historic place, but also in some way it symbolizes love of a different kind, but it's also a symbol of an era where the undivided India had reached a certain zenith of progress during the Mughal era. The Taj Mahal is there. And Musharraf himself was very keen to visit Agra, and I was present, and I was a witness to the very intense discussions that took place between Vajpayee and Musharraf. Vajpayee wanted a positive outcome of the Agra summit. He went out of his way, but unfortunately Musharraf wrecked it by calling the terrorists, the militants in Kashmir, as freedom fighters.
Right.
Now that, of course, was something totally unacceptable to India. The Agra summit collapsed. But I would like to mention to you, and this is something which the people of India should know, Prime Minister Vajpayee did not give up hope of achieving a breakthrough in India-Pakistan relations, and therefore he again made an attempt. In 2004, January, there was a SAARC summit in Islamabad, which Prime Minister Vajpayee attended. And now the situation is different. The same Musharraf, he came around to a view that said, in fact, in a joint statement of India and Pakistan, where for the first time Pakistan publicly, explicitly agreed that no part of Pakistani territory or territory occupied by Pakistan would be used for terrorism targeted against India. It was a tacit admission that Pakistan was in fact using its territory and the territory of Kashmir for terrorist activities in India, but he gave an undertaking that this would not happen. This was a big achievement for India and for Vajpayee ji in general. In particular.
Mr. Kulkarni, if I may come back to the legacy of Pervez Musharraf today. Undoubtedly a dictator, because he did not helm Pakistan because of a democratic process. He snatched power. He was in charge and is believed to be the architect of Kargil. There was an attempt at peace from our side. Musharraf couldn't close the deal. He spent the last several years of his life in exile from his own country. He took the blame, or he was blamed, when Benazir Bhutto was assassinated in his country. All in all, how would you describe this man who has now passed away? People tend to look kindly at those who have moved on. What, in your view, is his legacy?
You know, his legacy as far as India-Pakistan peace is concerned is mixed. We discussed earlier on how he was in fact responsible for the Kargil War. The Kargil War happened exactly at a time when India and Pakistan were about to reach a breakthrough. Prime Minister Vajpayee had gone to Lahore by way of a bus yatra and met the then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. And again, I travelled in the same bus with Vajpayee ji, and the atmosphere was very optimistic, and it appeared that India and Pakistan would come to some agreement on peace, bilateral peace, and also on resolving the Kashmir issue. But that is when Musharraf grabbed power, unseated Nawaz Sharif, and also was responsible for the Kargil War. So this is one aspect of his legacy. But the other aspect of his legacy is that later on he realized the futility of hostility with India, and as I mentioned to you, in 2004, in a joint statement after talks with Vajpayee ji in Islamabad, he said that no territory of Pakistan will be used for terrorist activities against India. Further on, when Dr. Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister, again this peace efforts continued, and there was the famous 4-point Musharraf formula for resolving the Kashmir issue. The back-channel discussions between India and Pakistan produced what I consider a very optimistic formula for resolving the Kashmir issue, the 4-point formula, whereby the two sides would agree that there would be demilitarization of Kashmir and a complete end to terrorism. At the same time, the LOC, line of control, would be made porous, which means irrelevant. And there would be free movement of people and trade across LOC between India and Pakistan, which I think was a very good move. So this is the second aspect of Musharraf's legacy.
So when Mr. Tharoor refers to him as a force for peace and raises a controversy, how would you look at that? Because after all of these events in Agra in 2004, what happened next was very contrary to what Musharraf seemed to be saying.
Whatever Dr. Shashi Tharoor had said about Musharraf is completely true. The latter part of his legacy was on of trying to make peace with India. And therefore there is no need for questioning whatever Dr. Tharoor had said. Of course, because he did not take his own people into confidence, he did not take the political parties into confidence, because he had grabbed power in an undemocratic manner, he could not deliver on what the back-channel discussions had arrived at. And therefore we see that the 4-point formula on resolving the Kashmir issue did not go ahead. And unfortunately, even after Narendra Modi ji has become Prime Minister, there has been absolutely no forward movement in India-Pakistan talks to resolve the Kashmir issue. But when we look back at Musharraf's own legacy, I would say that he will be seen as a dictator. He will be seen as a villain of the Kargil War, which was a complete fiasco for Pakistan, a misadventure. And at the same time, he will also be remembered as someone who made a sensible proposal for peace with India and between India and Pakistan.
Well, he made a sensible proposal, perhaps in the words of Sudheendra Kulkarni. It could not be carried out on. The rest, of course, is history, and Musharraf did finally die outside his homeland. He was ill and he was in exile. Whatever it may be, however you view Pervez Musharraf's legacy, the fact is that he was one of the imposing figures of that era between India and Pakistan. Thank you so much, Sudheendra Kulkarni, for joining us and putting it in perspective.
Tamanna, I would like to add one more thing, if you permit me.
Sure.
Tamanna?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to add one more small point, if you permit me. I met Musharraf, General Musharraf, once again in 2005 when L.K. Advani, the president of the BJP then, made a historic visit to Pakistan, and I accompanied Advani ji, and we met Musharraf at the army headquarters. And again he reiterated the need for India and Pakistan to put hostility behind and make peace. Unfortunately, the subsequent events in Pakistan destabilized his own power. He could not deliver on it. I met him once again in 2015 in Karachi when there was a track 2 meeting, and he happened to be a speaker where I was a speaker. But on the whole, it's unfortunately a missed opportunity for which he himself was responsible.
Well, a checkered past, a mixed sort of legacy. Maybe at the end of the day, those who want to look upon his legacy kindly would say, at least he tried. Thank you once again, Sudheendra Kulkarni.